So I think every woman who has ever lived with a man has this shared lived experience where they're with you and they get a call and they're like, hey, yeah, all right, sure, bye. I want to womansplain how I think one of the biggest miscommunications between the way men's brains and women's brains work is our need for form over function and their need for function over form. And I have a really funny symbol to show you this.
All right, so I bought this cute little napkin holder, right? It's got a cute little bird on it, cute little leaves, and I bought these cute little decorative autumnal napkins.
And like, we use the napkins. I'm not like this monster, you know, decoration towels are bad enough. I'm not going to have decoration napkins too. So we use them and we were running a little bit low, right?
And so I noticed when I get home that they had been replenished, and I look in the back and sure enough, he had restocked them with some extra Little Caesars napkins that he had.
I'm dying laughing because my first thought in my head is, oh my God, he doesn't know that this is illegal. He doesn't know that I have a secret treasure trove of seasonal napkins for all occasions should they run low. But then my second thought was, wait, this isn't illegal. This is resourceful. My husband is single-handedly saving the planet.
I mean, he understood the assignment, did he not? Napkins go here, he put napkins there.
Like, why did I let Instagram fry my brain into thinking I need to spend all this extra money on decorative seasonal napkins when Little Caesars gives you a massive handful every time? So, we're keeping it. We're done being perfect little Instagram moms. Use the Little Caesars napkin. So I think every woman who has ever lived with a man has this shared lived experience where they're with you and they get a call and they're like, hey, yeah, all right, sure, bye. And you're like, what was that? And he's just like, oh, Cousin Dale's in the hospital. And so of course we're like, well, why? And then what does he have the audacity to say? I don't know. How dare you? Which leads you to ask like 3 more questions, even though at this point you have no reliable foundation that there's any further information coming your way, like which hospital, where was he at, what was he doing? He doesn't know because he didn't ask, because guys don't ask. And here's why. Basically, a lot of men live in a constant state of fight or flight, and neither of those really warrant any time to ask questions. If you're Rocky in the ring, you're trying to get in and get out as quick as possible, right? He figures if it's important, he'll get the details in time. How many of you have heard this before? And honestly, deep down, a lot of them are kind of like, the less I know, the better. Every guy you know has gotten in trouble for knowing things at least once. Also, a lot of guys are just treating you the way they want to be treated. For a lot of guys, getting asked a lot of questions at once feels like an interrogation, even if the questions are innocent. Finally, it's just a different culture for men. Men receive basically the opposite of praise when they do any sort of gossiping. Remaining stoic and gathering only necessary information is considered manly. But rest assured, it may take days, weeks, months, even years. There will come a day when someone tells your man, hey, you remember that time Dale went to the hospital? Yeah, turns out he got bit by a beaver. And he's going to be sitting there smiling to himself thinking, man, my girl is going to be so happy to hear this when I get home. Now, whether he remembers to tell you or not is another story. Okay, how many of you have very vivid memories from being a kid of your blood turning ice cold when you were being an asshole and your mom looked at you and said, oh, just wait until your dad gets home? Yeah, that was like mom code for you're fucked. Dad voice is a very real thing, and let's face it, men can be a lot more physically intimidating than women when it comes to enforcing discipline, and a lot of moms learn to utilize that tool very early on. But here's why maybe we shouldn't. It's not fair to dad. What dad doesn't tell mom, because he wants to be her protector and he wants to be the best parent he can be, is that it absolutely kills him when, after a long day away from his family, all he wants to do is come home and kiss and cuddle and hug his kids, only to walk through the door and have to be the bad guy. What dad doesn't tell mom, because he can tell that she's stressed and she needs a break, is that he can tell when the kids don't want him around for things because the threat of punishment exists with his presence. And I think it's really easy for moms to fall into this trap because we think to ourselves, well, I'm the primary parent, I'm with these kids all the time, I can off-source the tougher discipline to the tougher parent. And that sounds right in theory, but are we sacrificing our child's relationship with the other parent? Because when you tell a child at 3 p.m., just wait until your dad comes home, but dad doesn't come home until 6, that's 3 hours that this child is just marinating in anxiety and fear, all based around the idea of their dad coming home. That's going to change the way a kid feels about their dad, especially if it happens a lot. When men become fathers, they also want to be the security, the emotional support, the safe haven, not just the threat. Trust me, using that line won't improve your kid's behavior anyway, but the experience of getting to grow up looking forward to seeing your dad will have a way better effect. There's this phrase that very well-intentioned women keep saying to men, and they secretly hate it. Literally, we think we're so cute when we use this line, and we aren't. That line is, "How are you still single?" A bunch of dudes are already cringing. And the women are like, wait, what? Let me womansplain. We think we're giving a compliment because we're basically saying, well, you have so many attractive qualities that we are genuinely surprised you aren't wifed up. But to guys, it's just a shitty question to ask because if they knew or had an answer for you, they probably wouldn't be single. It's literally like asking someone why they're broke. Like, I don't know, it's not for lack of trying. Now, another part of this phenomenon that's so frustrating to men is a lot of times these women will claim to like these qualities in them, and then they'll watch these same women turn around and date total boys with nothing going for them outside of charisma and putting on a face. Now, there are a lot of guys who would have no issue answering this question. They would just say real quick because it's not worth it, and those guys need a hug and a beer. But for most guys, unless you're planning on asking them out on a date, don't ask them why they're still single. When you have pulled the whole friend group. Big oof, that is not the flex you think it is. First of all, girls who pull the whole friend group don't have a friend group for very long. Second, when a girl's whole friend group is just dudes, that's a red flag to other dudes and other girls. There's also a term for when someone gets passed through the friend group. It's called a homie hopper. It's not the reputation you want. And if you manage to sleep with every guy in a friend group, it's not something to brag about. It doesn't mean you're some irresistible babe. That's like a sacrificial lamb bragging about feeding so many people. Like, that's very selfless of you, but you're not exactly protecting yourself. If you think there's some aspect of competition, there's not, because some guys seriously don't mind sharing. In a friend group, if they see a homie hopper, they'll just wait their turn. And on the opposite of those guys, you have guys who recognize a homie hopper and stay far away, but not many guys will sit in the middle, see you go through all their best friends, and then say, that's the one I'll settle down with. If you really want to be the only girl in a group of guys, there's only 3 safe ways to do it. 1, you're gay. 2, you're in a long-term relationship with one of the guys. Or 3, you don't hook up with any of them. Men and women can be friends, but if you're counting how many of them you've pulled, you are not one of the guys. Trust me. Him, where are you? Me, because I'm mad at him. This is a really clever way to make it look like you're at a party when you're not, but it's not a very clever way to get the resolution you're looking for when you're mad at your partner. Because none of the reactions are going to be what you want. Because what does a person who's doing this want? She wants to make him jealous enough to reach out and maybe apologize for what he did, but not jealous enough to make a breaking decision about the relationship. Let's analyze this one step further. This behavior is attempting to manipulate any insecurities he may have in order to solicit subjugation to her in the argument. But here's the thing, that's only one possible outcome. Here are the other more likely outcomes. 1, he recognizes exactly what you're doing. You didn't think he couldn't do that, did you? Like, I'm pretty sure it's actually included in the talk at this point. Son, you're gonna want to check that reflection on the Snapchat for any glare behind the cocktail, because if so, that's bait. And you might never find out he caught you because guys don't want to deal with the secondhand embarrassment of telling you that they know what you did. So instead, you might just be passive-aggressively snapping about being ghosted a couple days later. Option 2, he does deal with the secondhand embarrassment and just straight up calls you out. And that might be worse. He might be turned off by the fact that you thought he was dumb enough to fall for that and might want to pursue a relationship where no one's playing games, and he'd be entitled to. 3, he might fall for it, but still not be okay with dating a girl who acts single every time they get into a fight. Like, he could buy it and you could still get dumped. Or 4, he really does start crying and bugging out and apologizing and begging you to call him. And at that point, you still lose, because that's not a man, that's a little bitch. I'm sorry, but if you want a man who is that easily manipulated by his emotions, you might be toxic. But, like, the final outcome isn't even believable. I can see the pixels. And wouldn't it be so funny if he recognized that glass from her cupboard? Look, any little technique like this, ignoring him all day, flirting with other guys in public, anything designed around making him just jealous enough to react is not gonna land you a good guy. That shit will either land you a return to Tinder or an asshole. Crazy idea, but next time this happens, maybe just try telling him, something you did made me upset. Can we work it out? But what do I know? I've just been with the same guy for almost a decade. One of the biggest differences between men and women is that men do not care how much women make. Even with women taking up more and more of the workforce, men do not care if a woman earns less, if a woman earns more, or even if she earns any income at all. A man will marry a part-time waitress at a diner if she's kind to him. Us women can't exactly say the same. This is data from the Pew Research Center that shows which percentage of adults view each quality as being important or necessary for a man or a woman to be considered a good husband or a good wife. While there's a slightly higher expectation for women to have a better attitude and to do a few more chores, men are vastly more expected to provide financially. And again, this is both men and women answering, so even men agree that they should be the providers. However, in a separate study, when men were asked which characteristics of a woman were necessary when considering marriage, financial competency was consistently one of the highest ranked. So in conclusion, men don't need a woman who earns money, they need a woman who understands it. What this also means is that men are significantly less likely to be more impressed by a woman with a big career who earns a lot of money. You could bring in $2 million a year and he will still choose a broke woman if she's kinder to him. So like it or not, that is one of the biggest differences between men and women.
Have some fun.